One of the nice things talking about coyotes in this area is the coyotes that live in the Chicago region are the most studied coyotes in the world. They've been looked at scientifically for the last 16 years. Extraordinary amount of information that the researchers have learned about the coyotes that live around here, except anytime you're dealing with science. And that's what we talk about, is science. Things do change. Science changes. That's not a problem with science, that's what science is. So information that you might have learned 20 years ago about coyotes may not be true now. Information that you're going to learn today, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, may not be true anymore. So, if something I tell you this morning, you find out 50 years from now is not true, contact me. Look me up. We'll go out for a beer and discuss it. Real quickly, a little bit about identification of coyotes. They're a medium-sized predator. The weight is a little bit deceptive. I think a lot of wild animals people look at and assume they're going to be bigger than they are. But coyotes are about 4 feet long. They weigh 25 to 35 pounds. They're about 20 inches at the shoulder. They're not big animals. There's one standing nicely right here in front of me. A dog that size, a pet dog that size, usually weighs a lot more than a coyote does. If you think about athletes, cross-country runners versus offensive linemen, they may both be 6'3", but one weighs a lot less than the other. Coyotes are not heavy animals at all. They're common throughout Illinois, most of the United States. That's wrong. They're common everywhere in the United States now. Sometimes their ranges are 20 to 30 miles in diameter. They like to den in hollow trees, logs, brush piles. That's where they make their den. They don't live in the den year-round. The den is only a place for them to, the family to raise their young. In Illinois, packs are uncommon. The word pack is misleading. They're families. That's what they live in. When you talk about wolves, wolves are a social creature that live in extended families. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, parents and their young. Coyotes live as a family. Mom, dad, and the young, and that's all. They're good swimmers, they're extremely fast. Mostly active from dusk till early morning hours, but they can be seen any time of day. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's maybe nothing wrong with the coyote, he just wants to be moving around in the middle of the day. So if you see a coyote at noon, don't assume that it's sick or injured. He's just doing something that most other coyotes don't do. They reach sexual maturity at 1 year or 2 years, usually 2 months gestation. Right now, this is usually mid-February is their breeding season. The number of young they have is determined by how much food is available. Only 5 to 20% of coyote pups survive their first year. In other words, sometimes 80 to 95% of the coyotes born won't see their first birthday. Young are helpless and blind at birth. They stay in the den for 3 weeks with mom. When they're a couple months old, they start moving out into their neighborhood. Usually in the fall or early winter, then the males need to disperse and go and find a place to live on their own. One thing that research has shown us is that they disperse in all directions, north, south, east, and west. Some disperse far away. Some stay close. Some move far away and then come back. So it just again shows that when we're studying the coyotes, there's no set pattern to what they do when they're dispersing. They eat. They're omnivorous. They're considered carnivores. They usually eat small mammals and small birds, bird eggs, but they'll eat anything that's available. They're very opportunistic hunters. One nice thing about the animals, the coyotes that live around here, they tend to eat natural food, what they should be eating. When you go to other parts of the country, you'll find that coyotes eat more human-associated food, garbage and such, pets. Depends on location and season what they're eating. Voles, the little mammals, little rodents, huge part of their diet. Rabbits, deer at a certain time of the year. A coyote can actually catch a fawn for only a couple of weeks. After that, a fawn is able to outrun a coyote. A 3-week-old fawn can pretty much outrun a coyote. But that period when they can't run that fast, then they're in danger of being predated by coyotes. House cats, 0 to 7%. Plants, 8 to 45%. That 45% usually happens in late summer, early fall, when there's a lot of fruit on the ground. They love to eat mulberries. They love to eat crab apples. This is a nice thing for people who aren't real fond of geese. Coyotes depredate more than 40% of goose nests. They can walk away with the eggs. They'll go after the young. In the spring, they take a lot of deer. Yearly routine, January through March is the mating season. Right around here, it coincides with Valentine's Day, so it's nice to remember. The pups are born usually the end of April into May. They stay as that family through September. The young start dispersing in September, and some actually will stay around with mom and dad into the winter. They communicate with other coyotes a lot. The howls are famous. They announce territory. They're trying to attract. They're communicating. That's what they're doing. Don't believe the myth that coyotes howl to celebrate their kill. They don't. They sound playful at times. The yips, the barks, the huffing, they use scents. They use their poo as communication. They like to defecate in the middle of trails. Most people walking their dogs in the forest preserve have the courtesy to let their dogs go to the bathroom off the trail. Coyotes don't show that courtesy. They like to defecate usually in the middle of intersections. And their poo is very familiar. There's a lot of hair in it. Coyotes the facial expressions of our coyote range just like your pet dogs at home. You can tell when they're happy. You can tell when they're sad. You can tell when they feel guilty. Pup survival over a 12-month period. When they're born, they're all around. By the end of the year, very few coyotes from that litter are still around. Mortality, road kills. There's not a lot of predators out there for coyotes around here. History of the coyotes, they were here in the 1940s, 1950s. They were here in the 1840s and 1850s. Lake County, not Forest River, Lake County had a bounty on coyotes in the 1840s and the 1850s. During the 60s and 70s, the sightings increased. In the 1980s, they were well established almost everywhere. If you live within half or 3/4 of a mile of a forest preserve, or a golf course, park district, railroad tracks, a creek, light industry, healthy neighborhoods, cemeteries, you're in coyote habitat. They're across the state. Current distribution across the continent. They adapt well. There's no animal in North American history that they have tried to eradicate with the efforts that they put forth to eradicate coyotes. It's failed. There are more coyotes now than ever before. This middle statement, considered one of the most intelligent mammals in North America. Willowbrook, we don't usually use the words smart or dumb, but coyotes are highly adaptable. They learn. They learn what they can get away with. They learn what they can't get away with, and they don't do that again. They're amazingly adaptable animals. And they can utilize nearly every type of suburban habitat, including Michigan Avenue. This is the coyote that went into the Quiznos store a few years ago. That's him in the cooler. Beautiful shot. A scared little coyote who wanted to cool off by climbing into the Sobe drink cooler at the Quiznos. Here's a coyote that wandered onto a city bus and curled up in the front seat. They're in our backyards. They drink out of water fountains. There's one in an elevator. They're in culverts. This sort of shows the increase in complaints about nuisance coyotes from 1990 till a couple years ago. Does this mean there's more coyotes over this 10-year period, or was there more public awareness of coyotes over this 10-year period. Anytime, you know, I don't want to blame media for anything. Media reports stuff. But when the media reports an encounter with a coyote, other people tend to contact newspapers and say, I had that too. One of the things about media is they tend to look at sensational stories. And anytime you can put the word attack into a story, it's going to be sensational. So when we hear about coyote attacks, the word attack is usually a red flag for us. Coyotes don't attack. They do approach. Coyotes are very curious animals. They're always looking to see what they can get away with. If they can go into your backyard and eat a little bit of dog food without any negative, anything negative happening to them, they'll remember that and they'll come back. If they go into a backyard and something negative happens to them, they'll remember that and they won't venture into your backyard as readily. It is highly seasonal, the number of calls we get. And this pattern repeats itself year after year after year. The calls increase in the late fall when the young are dispersing. There are more coyotes out there because the young are dispersing. If you look at June and July, there's very few calls about coyotes because they don't want to be conspicuous. This is when they have the young in the neighborhood around their den and they don't want to be seen. But they have to disperse eventually. Interactions with other dogs. Coyotes like to approach, they're curious, they like to approach other animals and just sort of see what's going on. Now they can, sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes it's trying to establish their territory, sometimes it's aggressive. Sometimes coyotes will go after little dogs or big dogs if they think that they're a threat. And then there's also non-aggressive. There are videos, there are YouTube videos of a coyote and I think it's a golden retriever separated by a chain link fence. They approach, they touch noses, and they run up and down the length of the fence, wagging their tails, bowing their heads down. There's no other word for it except they are playing together. Other times coyotes chase dogs, other times dogs chase coyotes. Herrick Lake, there was a coyote went after a small dog. The gentleman there would take his dog to the back areas of Herrick Lake and let it off the leash to play with his girlfriend. Then the coyote didn't like that after a while. Springbrook, East Branch, this is actually, I think, somewhat of an old slide because we have encounters with coyotes in every single forest preserve we have now, not just these. Pet owner responsibilities, and this is the most important thing for the public. Watch your pets. Don't let them out. I don't think it's legal to allow cats to run free in DuPage County. I'm searching to see if anybody's nodding at that. Good. Cats are in danger of being taken out by coyotes if they're running loose. Dogs should always be on a leash or supervised in your yard. Coyote attacks on pets appear to be on the rise. They hit the newspapers. They hit the channel, the television news. We know when there are coyote attacks, and since it is considered an attack when your pet gets chased, that's the kind of thing that the media likes to report. Human perception, fear and loathing. There are people who are scared of wild animals. There's people, we've seen it in cartoons, we've seen it on television, I've seen my wife do it. She gets on a table if there's a mouse in the kitchen. She's terrified of little animals. If it's a big animal, you're even more scared. We can't tell people don't be scared. I don't like the thought that fear is based in ignorance because a lot of times it's not. You can be extremely smart, but there are things that scare you. And there's no amount of education that's going to get you over that fear. There's phobias. Again, you guys in law enforcement, you know human behavior probably better than most people. You got to sort of understand what fear does to people. It makes them exaggerate, makes them not remember, maybe recollect some things as accurately. The worst thing a coyote is guilty of is being seen. Out of sight, out of mind is a very nice thing. Sensationalism has reported increased concern. That's just human nature too. If you see something and it's on the news, and then you notice it, you think that's newsworthy as well. We live in a society that's detached and lacks understanding of the natural world. That's why we have these programs. That's why we try and educate people about wild animals. This slide, it's a few years old now. Coyotes, though, they do bite people. Most of the time, bites aren't out of the blue. It's after people have been feeding coyotes. A few years ago in Wheaton, there was a concern about coyotes becoming aggressive and killing dogs, and they hired a trapper, and that trapper caught 5 coyotes. 3 of those coyotes had human-associated food. Vegetables, dog food, cat food, and bread in it. They were being fed. Don't feed coyotes, and you won't have coyotes coming into your backyards and potentially bothering your children or your pets. I don't know if you can see this from the back. There's very few dots of where coyote, distribution of coyote attack, but now this is 10 years old. California. Why does California have more coyote attacks? They might have more coyotes, but they also feed them. The people in California have a bad habit of feeding wildlife more than most other states. Attack, again, we want to look at the word attack. Are they just investigating? Are they going up and sniffing? Are they trying to run past a person? An attack is going up and biting something. Most of these are not going up and biting something. Interesting photograph from Carol Stream where these little kids are looking at a coyote den. And there's always a split down the middle. Some people look at this and they think how lucky those kids are to be able to observe nature. Other people look at this and say, this is one of the scariest images I could imagine because where are the parents? Well, the parents are probably holding the camera. Coyotes have been studied throughout Cook County. Those yellow bars show Poplar Creek Forest Preserve, I think Bussey Woods and Max McGraw Wildlife. Those are the studies, shows how coyotes move through their areas. These are, each blue dot is a tick on where a coyote wearing a collar was marked. Now you can see those areas where the heavy concentration is, those are the study areas. If you could tick every coyote in this area, the entire slide would be blue. Solitary coyotes have a much larger range. They're dispersing. The family groups, the families stay together in little tight territories. I don't know if you can see these circles, but there's very little overlap with the families. They live in proximity to other coyote families. The individual males dispersing, they'll cross anywhere. They use all kinds of habitat, open habitat, residential, commercial. They can be found anywhere. This is Woodfield, and those green dots are around the IKEA and the IKEA parking lot, and the IKEA retention pond. This coyote lives at Woodfield. And there's the retention pond. Again, seasonal dispersal patterns. I think we talked about this. You know, what they're doing at different times of the year. Again, they go north, south, east, and west. Some go far, some stay close. Some go far and then return. Laws, about 7,000 to 9,000 coyotes are trapped or hunted each year. Trapping season is restricted to the fall and the winter. Hunting is open year-round. There's a 3-month period where you can hunt coyotes 24 hours a day. You can use any caliber handgun. You can use rifles, you can use shotguns, you can use semi-automatic rifles with large magazine clips. You can call them in electronically. You can use spotlights on them. That's for a 3-month period of the year. The rest of the year you can only shoot coyotes between half hour between sunup and a half hour after sundown. You can hunt coyotes every day of the year in Illinois. Leash laws, you can't let your dog or other animal leave the Premises of its owner when not under control. DuPage County, dogs cannot run loose. The Forest Preserve, every dog has to be on a leash unless you're in one of the dog areas. Nearly all open spaces are used by coyotes. I wouldn't even use the word nearly. I think all open spaces are utilized by coyotes. There's some areas they like more than others. Large-scale movements have important implications for management. One of the thoughts is if there's nuisance coyotes, you trap them and take them far away, and they're out of sight. They'll try and come back. Peaceful existence occurs every day. There are coyotes living within a half a mile of every one of us. Removal is temporary. You take it far away, it'll come back. Trapping and removal. It illustrates the adaptability of coyotes. The Texas study here was in Harris County. Houston is in Harris County. They had a 10-year project to eradicate the coyotes. They're going to spend $1 million over a 10-year period. At the end of the 10-year period, there were more coyotes than when they started. Removal, it treats a symptom, it's not a cure. When you try to remove coyotes, you will end up with more coyotes. Poorly documented, but coexistence occurs every day. There's coyotes everywhere. Management should focus on public education. That's why we're here. That's why Willowbrook exists. If you guys have any questions, we're there 7 days a week. Ask us. We'll go out and we talk to garden clubs, Kiwanis clubs, Rotary clubs, law enforcement groups, library programs, city programs. We'll talk about coyotes to anybody. As part of our community outreach, so there's no charge for a program on coyotes. And one of the positive aspects is they're good at rodent control, they're good at goose control. They are predators of overabundant species. They're the top predators in Illinois. To have a healthy ecosystem, you need predators. You need every step of the food chain. And it's, put things in perspective. If we lived out west, people would be concerned about bears. If we lived in Wyoming, people might be concerned about wolves. If we lived in northern Wisconsin, people might be concerned about wolves. If we lived in the Black Hills, people would be concerned about mountain lions. Here, we have coyotes. Avoiding problems in the early winter through spring. They're mating, they're caring for their young. They're less tolerant of interlopers in their territory. They will chase dogs away from what they consider their territory. Coyotes may perceive a wandering dog as a threat and become defensive. A leash keeps your dog by your side and out of trouble. 3 million people a year are bitten in the United States by domestic dogs. 1,000 dog bites in DuPage County. Fewer than 100 coyote bites in a 30-year period in North America. So we're trying to put things into perspective. No coyote bites have occurred in DuPage County. When a supposed coyote bite or attack occurs, it hits the newspaper. When it's proven that it probably wasn't a coyote, that usually does not hit the newspaper. There was a man a couple years ago in Aurora who said he was bitten in his backyard by a coyote. It proved that was a domestic animal, not a coyote. That story didn't hit the paper. This recent incident in Riverside where the guy said the coyotes were throwing themselves at the glass of his door trying to break in. Nobody really believes that. But again, it made the newspaper. It made the news. Our activities influence a coyote's natural fear. It behooves us as humans to try and get coyotes so they're not so comfortable around us. Again, they're always trying to see what they can get away with. We want to make sure they don't get away with anything. We don't want them coming onto our porches. We don't want them going after our pets. Rule number 1, discourage close encounters. Make them feel unwelcome. You can clap your hands, you can open umbrellas, you can shake garbage bags at them. Just do something that they don't expect. You'll scare them away. That's what we need to do. Get them scared of us. While aggressive displays towards people are not considered normal coyote behavior, it is important to note that coyotes will become comfortable around humans if we let them. We shouldn't let them. Do not approach or touch a coyote. Do not feed coyotes intentionally or unintentionally. Every time I talk to groups, now after I've talked a while about coyotes, and I'll ask people, does anybody ever put food out in the backyard for wild animals to see what comes up? Nobody raises their hand. Well, when I start talking about this, and in a very conversational way say, has anybody ever put food out in the backyard, see what comes up to it? Hands go up. Stop that practice. Keep garbage inside. Keep the grills and barbecues clean. It's amazing what comes up to your grills in the middle of the night. Clean under your bird feeders. Bird seed attracts rodents, possums, raccoons. Those will attract the predators. Keep your dogs leashed. Be a responsible pet owner. Supervise them as you would a child. Some people like to leave brush piles and tall grass in the yard to attract wildlife. If you don't want to attract wildlife, don't keep brush piles in your yard and keep your grass trimmed. Stand your ground. Don't run. And it's not don't run because it's going to chase you down and grab you. It's because we want to make that coyote aware of his place. Face the coyote. Yell at it. Show dominance. Clap your hands. Blow a whistle. Boat horns. Air horns. Anything like that. Wave your arms. People have asked, what about pepper spray? What about mace? Sure, why not? If it makes you comfortable to carry that, go ahead. Just be careful that you're downwind and not upwind when you spray it. Any wild animal demands respect. Raccoons, possums, mice, skunks, hawks, owls, you have to respect that animal. Keep a safe distance. Teach your children to do the same. One of the things we're always telling kids is, if you can walk up to a wild animal, there's something wrong with it. Don't. Don't walk up to a squirrel. Don't walk up to a bunny. Don't walk up to a coyote or a goose. If you can approach it, there's probably something wrong with it. Wild animals are supposed to try and get away from us. Even the coyotes. Don't approach them. Coyotes or wolves, we don't have to worry about the wolves so much. We don't have a population of wolves in Illinois. We do have a lot of coyotes. This kind of thing is certainly available on almost every website. And acknowledgments. There's a lot of people who have gone into this, this research. Cook County Forest Preserve has taken the lead. Dr. Stan Gert from Ohio State University certainly is probably the world's expert on urban coyotes now. And then there's just a lot of other people involved here. Dan Thompson, Rob Erickson, people at Brookfield Zoo, Max McGraw Wildlife, and DuPage County Forest Preserve.